Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, coaches around the world, welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. It's your boy, the Road Dog, with none other than the man, the myth, the NHL playoff predicting genius himself, Dr. Karl Bryan, back at you. 2024. Not to date the podcast,
not a doctor,
but
not a doctor, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, Shoots? What's going on, Road Dog?
Well, I am good. We did a little hockey talk in the pre-show. We won't bore the podcast listeners with that too much more. But, you had mentioned in the pre-show, we were talking about one of the programs that you guys do through Focus.com, which is your local legends program. And you had mentioned that there's a lady in there that's going to be coming up soon, probably on a podcast episode. Trending towards, what did you say, 7 figures? Did I hear that right?
Seven figures straight off the back of local legends. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Besides the obvious of how, but it's more of a, how do you scale to that capacity as an individual business coach without losing your mind and life?
Good question. Impossible. No. Look, so we finished the pre-show with that. Like, group would be obvious answer. Again, just Tony Robbins 101. Again, you look at Tony Robbins' program, and he's got business. What's it called? You unleash the power within, right? It's a 4-day thing. He's got 5,000 people for 4 days jumping up and down, doing their thing. On day 2 in the afternoon, he closes his 10, I don't know how much it is. Let's just call it 10. Let's just call it $1,000 for UPW. It's a little more expensive now, but let's just call it $1,000. And then the university on day 2 is sold at 10 grand. Okay. And then a little bit later on day 2, he's a very clever guy. He knows how to work out who in the audience have got money. And then he puts those people in a separate room. And then he pitches platinum. And let's call that a $100,000 program for the sake of the argument. It's close to that. And then once you're in the $100,000 program, guess what? He's got the $250,000 program. And then when you're in the $250,000 program, you could assume that you're in line to potentially be a one-to-one client, which no doubt nowadays would be difficult to do, but that's where he would peck his $1 million one-to-one clients from. And he's basically got an ascension ladder from, bottom to the top, group. And this is, again, what we talked about on the pre-show. But the magic of group coaching is it's got network effects towards your one-to-one, right? So if you have, 50, if you have 10 people, 50 people in a group setting, there's a percentage of them that just want more of you, and they will spend more, right? So as I always say, if you want to get a $50,000 coaching client from a text message, the way to do it is to have group coaching and then keep in touch with those folks. And that's how you'd close a $50,000 coaching client via text message, as a group client becoming a one-to-one. So I think the answer to your question is an ascension ladder, but really take group and put it in quotations. That's the answer.
There you go. So ascension ladder, that's still a thing. Hey, wow, magic. Hey, with that in mind, boy, oh boy, we finished last week strong, in my opinion. We were riffing pretty good, and we tackled the world's toughest question, Karl, and that is, what do you want?
Ooh.
Now, my question to you is, how many business coaches do you think actually have that conversation, not just with their clients, but with themselves? What do you think on that?
I'm glad you remembered that, Shoots, from the last week. That's good. Paying attention, Shoots. You're paying attention.
First for everything, buds. First for everything.
There's what am I going to say here? Look, not many to start with, and why? You just said it. It's the hardest question you could ever answer. What happens when I say, what do you want? You start answering very, very quickly. You segue into what you don't want. And that's you, me, Road Dog, and definitely your coaching client, right? So that's, it's a difficult thing to do. Needing nothing attracts everything comes to mind, like adopting that frame, I think is very, very powerful. It's like to be right is great, but the elite stance is just not having an opinion, right? Like just being the ultimate stoic. So I think like you're never, I actually read something on Facebook recently, and it's like you're never going to be as young as you are right now, right here in this moment. And the X factor is that in 10 years from today, you're going to wish that you were back at this moment. You know what I mean? You're going to wish that you were 10 years younger. So the years are going to pass. And it's just a matter of just, taking stock of exactly where you're at. Again, if you don't have the answer to this, it quite simply says that you haven't done the work. If your client doesn't have the answer to this, it quite simply says they haven't done the work. But it can be challenging, because again, social media, the guy driving by in his flashy Rolls Royce or the Mercedes or the BMW or the Lamborghini, comparison is the thief of joy, right? Make sure that when you're doing this work with yourself, with your client, that it's your goals, it's your vision. It's not your competitors. It's not what society tells you. It's not what mommy and daddy wanted for you. It's not what your spouse wants. Make sure that you're making them your goals, your dreams, your vision, your thing, right? And of course, doing that with your client. And I think instinctively that a lot of the time, the reason I'm saying that is that a lot of folks are, let's face it, they're kind of, comparison is the thief of joy, and they're spending too much time on Facebook, and therefore possibly their roadmap is not the one that they actually want to be on. Something else like Charlie Munger, right? Late, great Charlie Munger. Poor bugger died at, not sensational human being, had an unbelievable life. I only say poor bugger because now he's passed, but at the ripe old age of 99. But what does he say? Like I don't know if it's the first rule of success, but he words it in some way to say that low expectations were like very important to him and very important for others around him that had what he would measure as success. Again, when establishing what it is that you want, maybe that's something you want to do, is be thinking like, hang on a minute, is it the Lamborghini? Is it the monster house? And maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, but be willing to reverse engineer that a little bit and realize that, high expectations could be exactly what you need, and it might be the other. And then I think, so then Shoots, but just getting to it, decide what you want, write it down, and then do that 3 times a day, every day, right? Like your income, your monthly income goal, and let's call that 25 grand for the sake of the argument. Make your password for your phone 25,000, right? So like, I'm going to assume that you're opening up your phone many times per day. You're pumping in your goal tons and get your client to do the same, right? But again, it's one thing to say, here's what I want, but then in a day, in a week, in a month, in a quarter, in a year, do you even remember? And I'm going to challenge you to say that if you're part of society, there's a good chance that you move back and forth off of the trajectory of what it is that you want. Like, you know what I mean? It just changes, sometimes organically and sometimes for good reason. Things like a death in the family, etc. And so that being said, make sure that you're willing to adjust as needed, right? Perfection is the lowest standard on earth, right? The reason people don't work out what they want is because they make it more important. They seek, I think, perfection with that thing, as opposed to just try get something down and then be willing, if you're revisiting it 3 times a day, every day, I could only assume that small little tweaks, small little organic tweaks, small little, strategic tweaks would be something that would happen automatically, right? Maybe a mental hack. What this might fly in the face of what I just said a minute ago, but at the end of the day, it's your journey and you need to have your game plan. But I have found, and the data backs this up, the science backs this up, that creating a big picture, big vision, big picture for yourself and for your business can be incredibly, it's really important, right? Like versus, okay, so goals, what are they? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and with time restraint. Is that it, right? Like one of the things they say with SMART goals is you want to keep them realistic. And what I'm saying here is that the data, this is not me, this is the data, this is the science, suggests that having a monster goal is significantly better idea, right? Like something that is outside your purview, something that is outside what you genuinely think is possible. It's going to draw you a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. And in the end, you're going to end up significantly more satisfied, even if you don't get it, by the way. But again, if, you're shooting for the moon, you come up short, you're looking pretty good. So anyway, just creating that big game plan can work really, really well. And then, of course, get yourself in a strong position, right? Like if you're in a negative mental state, you're only going to see problems and challenges. You don't see the opportunities and the solutions. So make sure you get yourself into a really, really positive state, right? And by the way, let me look at your calendar and look at your accomplishments over the last 30, 60, 90 days, right? How much have you executed on, right? Execution drives revenue, right? Not big goals, not big dreams, not big motivation. But if you do have a big dream, I believe that you will execute at a higher level. Your client will execute at a higher level. But again, I challenge you to go back and be raw and real enough to revisit what you've done over the last 30, 60, 90 days via execution. And I want to challenge you to take your game to another level. How do you do that? I just said a minute ago, create a monster goal for yourself. Like one of the things we were talking about local legends in the pre-show and just a minute ago. Like what we do is you got to book 10 events, right? We don't do with the problem. We've talked about this, ad nauseum at different times in the podcast, but doing one event and then deciding how it went and letting that decide on whether or not you're going to do another one is just horrific strategy, right? Horrific strategy. So, creating that big picture and just challenging yourself. Execution drives revenue. Execute at a higher level, right? And maybe again, if you are going to accomplish massive goals, guess what? You're going to have to look after yourself physically. 10 minutes of sweating, they say, will add a healthy day to your life. Not to mention, doing that consistently will add a zero to your bank balance. Stretching, again, something else that we've talked about, but just looking after yourself physically, being able to touch your toes is cool. Not to mention stretching is an anti-aging technique on steroids. People go and spend money on Botox and all sorts of stuff. Let me tell you, you want to see the age of somebody, just watch them walk. And that can tell you a lot about where they're at and the age that they're at. Stretch on a daily basis. And you might find that will allow you the physical strength to both dream up that big goal and execute, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year to move yourself just a little bit closer to it. Again, take that Superman pose. Again, scientifically proven that if you stand with your shoulders back like Superman, you get into a significantly stronger mental state, and that's the place that you want to be, setting these big goals and then executing on these big goals. So anyway, Shoots, I don't know. I think again, people, it's a hard, you nailed it. It's a hard question to answer. Incredibly hard question to answer. And then people are trying to get it, they're trying to get it right. And then that stops them from executing, and maybe even Shoots, before I throw it back to you, rather than, and so that's, it's the big goal and it's executing 30, 60, 90 days towards that big goal, right? I think everybody gets that. It's obvious. One of the best ways to get there, one of the best ways to improve your execution, jack up your execution, put steroids in your ability to execute, is to do time, like have a look at your activity, and let's just go over the last week and the last month, and how much time do you spend farting around on Facebook, surfing the internet, looking at houses that you're probably not going to buy, looking at your stocks that you already own, and you're not going to, I don't know, is that a good use of your time? Science says absolutely not. Like basically take your unproductive time. So let's just say a Netflix show, you're going to take 5 hours a week and spend it on Netflix. Take those 5 hours away from Netflix and then put them onto picking up the phone, sending out messages to fill your local live event. And I think that you're going to find that activity, that hack, those 5 hours can get you so much closer to your goal that it could, just become mind-numbingly, I don't know, exciting. I don't know. It could really, really move the ball forward for you big time. And by the way, your client, of course, right? So that's and the goal, and then make sure that you got the goal right, right? Is the goal to be rich? Is the goal to be wealthy? And the answer to that is probably yes. But is that really what you want? And I'm going to challenge you to say what you really want is freedom. You want the freedom that the money and the wealth represents. So clearly define it and, know. And then, by the way, as I say that, if you're agreeing, my question for you is, how do you define freedom? Because the way that Road Dog defines it, the way I define it, and the way that you define it will be different. Your client defines it will be different also. Define what that is. It's, what does Buddha say? All misery comes from attachment, right? So if that's fact, and pretty close, right? I think that's pretty good. The solution to that is to detach. And my question is, what do you got to detach from, right? And I actually put this on my Facebook profile not long ago, but it was like, make a list of all the things you want, right? That's the car, the house, the pool, the business. And now make a list of 3 reasons why you don't need those things you want, right? And by the way, I'm not in any way suggesting that all of a sudden you become this just average being with average things and average levels of success. What I am saying is, don't be married, you know what I mean? Don't be attached. You want to, all misery comes from attachment. So detach yourself from it, right? I think that there's massive power in that. And your beliefs, by the way, they often say are probably things that you need to detach from more than anything else. Think politics. Your belief in politics. I'll just question, how far is it getting you? At what level is it serving you? And by the way, maybe it's serving you at a really high level, then congrats, high five. There's a decent chance that maybe they're not. Think about letting go about some of those beliefs, and certainly letting go of your opinion of the people who have different beliefs than you do. I think that there's incredible power in that. Anyways, so shoots. So that may or may not be, good. At the end of the day, I think there's a bit of an argument there for, massive goal, massive success. And then there's parlayed there also to say, okay, that's awesome. But what I don't want you to do is, in the pursuit of all of that, create this life where you don't enjoy it and you're so busy and you miss your kids growing up and you miss it, the exciting journey of building your company. So shoots, I don't know. What do you think? That's my answer, bud.
I saw I think it was Brian Tracy thing this morning, and it was about, what does he say? Like, write down your top 10 goals on a blank piece of paper, right? Yep. And then look at those and then go, what's the one of those that you absolutely got to have? Like, it's just, and he goes, it should just pop right off the page for you, which is pretty wild, right? When you actually think about it. Do you think people just set far too many different goals and they're just kind of all over the place, or?
Yeah. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. It's exactly 100% correct. Like if you have, they say if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have one.
Right.
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 So yeah, I think yes, exactly that. Just really, and then write it again, and you drill down what is that one thing, and then revisit it multiple times per day. How does that? It common sense, just it gets you closer to it. So yeah, love it.
Nice. Hey, I want to switch gears just for a second here, because one thing that you do talk a lot about is, I guess, creating moats, if you will, right? And I guess maybe explain what you mean by that, because it's sort of like maybe people haven't heard you talk about that. I've heard you talk about this a ton.
Yep.
But can you give the people some examples of moats to work towards with clients?
Yes, I like that question. Okay, well, I'll tell you, if you stand in front of a venture capitalist and you want to get $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, $100 million for your company, and let's call him Warren Buffett, for the sake of the argument, he wants to know, do you have a moat? And he also wants to know you have a blue ocean. But a moat, just I think a great example of a moat is if you go and Google. You've probably heard of HubSpot. They're getting a lot of press lately that they're going to take on like sales. They're coming for Salesforce, and they're definitely taking a bit of a chunk out of Salesforce's market share. So if you Google anything, like let's say, how long should a business plan be? On that first page, and quite likely high up, you are going to see an article from HubSpot. So basically, over the last decade, they have been spending an insane amount of time, an insane amount of money, an insane amount of energy on building a moat around their business where just small business owners are Googling, how to build my plumbing company. And then HubSpot's coming up, HubSpot's coming up, HubSpot's coming up. And then they have an organic flow, like, from that to the website to a free trial. And next thing you know, you're using their CRM. So that would be an example of a moat. And then Blue Ocean, and you should read Blue Ocean, the book Blue Ocean Strategy. I'd put that up there as a must read if you're listening to this. Just there is no end in sight, right? Like Amazon. Okay, so a 101 example of it. If you go B2B, you have significantly less blue ocean than if you go B2C. Okay, so Amazon is going to have a bluer ocean because they go to mom, dad down the street. And then Salesforce, who is B2B, if you don't own a business, I would be amazed if you have a Salesforce account, right? So blue ocean is just that, the ocean is, it's just ever expanding. Right. And then the opposite of that is a market where it eats itself. Right. So if you teach, florists how to build a referral program in a particular state, and that's all you do, and you don't expand outside of that state and outside of florists and outside of the referral program, at some stage you would hit, you know what I mean? You would touch all of the florists. Right. So now all of a sudden your market, you know what I mean? You just don't have a large enough market. So you would go from state to multiple states to nationwide to global in order to create more of a blue ocean. But that, again, still wouldn't create what they would see as a blue ocean, because, again, a blue ocean just continues to expand. So anywho, and then, by the way, if you created, again, a solution to that, let's make sure everybody's understanding. So if you went to florists, the way that I just described, but then you also created florists, right? Like a florist. So you had a program on how to start a floor. I don't even know what it's like, a florist shop. Is that what it's called? Like a florist shop. Do you see how that would create a broader market for yourself than if you only went to existing florists, right? So anyway, so that's so if you sat in front of Warren Buffett, those are the two things he's looking for. He's looking for a moat. He's looking for a blue ocean. And by the way, the ultimate personal moat is inner peace, right? Like the ultimate stance is just, it's not being judgmental, but it's just not caring, not noticing, being void of opinion, right? So just think of grandpa, the groundedness of grandpa. When somebody turns 80, they tend just not to give a crap anymore, right? What if you adopted this at this stage of your life, right? And this And again, so Moats generally we're talking about larger companies, but I also want to just talk to you as a business coach, as a consultant. The ultimate moat is you, right? You are the perfect moat. You got to just be unapologetically yourself. A great way to do that, by the way, is do local live events on a weekly, bi-weekly, certainly monthly basis. That is a great way. And then when you get up there, you got to be yourself, tell jokes that make sense to you, talk about topics that make sense to you. But at the end of the day, you are the best moat as a business coach, right? It's just difference between being authentic and unauthentic, right? But now I want to segue into, so you mentioned moats and like what are examples of moats for bigger companies, right? So like a big one that you guys will all know is disruption, right? So Airbnb went after hotels, and no doubt you could agree that hotels, the game has changed for hotels when Airbnb showed up. So that would be an example of disruption, or Uber did it for taxis. And then, of course, no doubt, the story of Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Brand is another moat, going to take, years, if not decades, to be able to build up in a really heavy way. But just think Ferrari, think Harley Davidson. Well, actually, it doesn't necessarily take a decade. That's not true. But no doubt you could see how to build a brand, Apple, Harley Davidson, Ferrari. Look, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. So maybe personal brand should also be there. That's where Elon Musk is the biggest personal brand on the planet by 100 miles, no question. Prior to him, I would dare say it was Steve Jobs. Zuckerberg's got himself a healthy brand. Bezos absolutely did it. But again, so they're personal, they're personal brands. And I think, again, for you as a business coach, this is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get out there and create a bit of a personal brand for yourself. Everybody loves the educator. So again, books, reports, live events are going to work in your favor big time when you're trying to do that. Moats, look, growth loop. So like LinkedIn as an example. So you sign up on LinkedIn and then you send somebody a message and it says, hey, sign up for LinkedIn. Or Gmail would be a good example of that. Somebody sends you an email from Gmail at the bottom, sign up here. That's how Hotmail, grew way back in the day. Again, they just send an email like, oh, set up your account here. And everybody clicked on the button. Next thing you know, they got a Hotmail account. And, next thing you know, email is what it is today. DocuSign would be another good example where Road Dogg and I are signing a contract. And then I send him some paperwork and he signs it. And as soon as he signs it, the first thing that says, hey, create your own account here. And he's like, wow, that was a really seamless process. I'd like to have that for my company. Next thing you know, that pops up. So that would be an example of a growth loop. Low cost provider, that would just be Walmart 101. That, again, is that the best position? There's a debate to say that's a horrible position. There's a debate to say that's a really strong position. If you don't have deep pockets, that's not something your client's going to be able to do. And as I'm talking about this, just be thinking about your small business clients. Are they going to do it on Walmart level, Netflix level, DocuSign level? The answer is no, but I can tell you that they could create, locally a bit of an impact with their company that would surprise you. The problem is they're not thinking on this level, so therefore, they're not even coming close because they're not thinking on this level, right? Here, look, a good one, cults. Vans would, my best bud, I was talking to him yesterday and he's telling me, because I wear Vans a lot, and he's like, I got a pair of Vans, man. I'm wearing a pair of Vans, and he's really proud of it, and Vans have got a bit of a cult following. I mean, the brand is, God, I don't know how old, but again, these are high school days. Apple would absolutely have a cult. Sports tend, like the NFL, UFC, WWF, which still stands today, which I don't understand. But anyways, that's absolutely got that kind of cult-like feeling. You've done this right when they start getting tattoos of your brand, right? Like Harley Davidson, right? That's when you did good. I'm trying to think of more like practical local business moats. Like here's one, call it float. Okay, an example here is like a SaaS company. Okay, so this is actually the Salesforce 101. Here's how Salesforce basically had their inflection point. They had a monthly subscription. Okay, so you pay $10 a month, $100 a month, or whatever it is, right? Instead of paying, let's just call it $100 a month for the sake of the argument. Instead of paying $100 a month, they would offer you like 12 months pay up front, and then they would do it for like $9.97. And suddenly they had like a lot more than half of their clients were now paying up front. And basically what happened is Salesforce no longer needed to raise money at that point because they were able to use their cash flow to basically build. Whereas when they were doing their monthly subscription, which they thought, look, this is the model that we want, the model they moved towards, they weren't able, they had to, continue to raise money, and they were always, chasing from behind a little bit. Basically offering that 12 months up front was a stroke of genius. And Mark Benioff, if you've read the book, he will tell you that was what took Salesforce from being, a successful company to all of a sudden being, a company with a moat and a formidable force in the CRM space, competing with the best of the best of the best. So what did I just say? Your client, with their fees, how is it that they're collecting them? And a lot of them have subscription. If they have a subscription and they start getting that subscription 12 months up front with a, decent discount, that can change the game for the business owner in a very real and tangible way, and they will appreciate it. So the pricing is kind of, we went through there. Flywheel, Amazon, Uber, eBay. Basically, flywheel means that just as they grow, like a flywheel expands and speeds up. So Amazon just take market share, more market share, more market share, until they're such a formidable force that they just can't be, you're just not going to start up, an online store and be able to compete with Amazon. It's just not going to happen. It's pretty obvious. But that basically is a direct result of the flywheel, where people would, ultimately they want to have, the book is called The Everything Store. He wants to have everything on Amazon, right? And then what that does is just economies of scale, and they are able to buy better. Like, actually, here's the best example I can give you. And I've done this lots, and I've done it on the podcast, but I'll do it again here. My daughter, she's 10 years old, and she likes American dolls, right? So just think of a doll that's like, you carry it through the airport and it looks like a real doll or a real baby, right? Anyway, so my wife could go to Toys R Us and take a stab at whether or not they have the American doll that she wants in stock. Or she could jump on Amazon and know that it's in stock. And if it's not in stock, they're going to tell her exactly when it is going to be and when they're going to ship it, right? So now my daughter has now got the American doll, but she wants a house, she wants a new outfit, she wants a wig, she wants a toque, she wants, something for the American doll. Again, is my wife going to jump in the car and drive to Toys R Us and hope that the house is there? Or is she going to go on Amazon where she knows that it's going to be there, right? The answer is obvious. So that's effectively how Amazon created the flywheel, where it's the everything store, everything is there. And why would my wife, light an hour and a half on fire driving to the store and then back when she could just jump on Amazon and get it, right? So that is, look, complexity. This might look SpaceX as an example, or Coke, the formulas under lock and key. We all know that, right? So complexity, one of the things, so I created, nobody had ever created software for the consulting space before we did 10 years ago. One of the things we did is that we took something and then we made it, complex and challenging And we basically took consulting and we turned it into software, which nobody else had done, right? So again, profit acceleration software would fall underneath complexity there, but higher level, think Coke under lock and key, and think SpaceX. Maybe one more, Shoots, just before I throw it back to you. Anti-Fragility would be another moat, and that's just putting yourself in a position like Apple's in the position where they have so much cash on hand that they can basically, there's no amount of money that they can't spend on R&D, a new product, a new service, and then not have it work, and then be able to just dust themselves off and keep going, right? Again, and Facebook are semi-famous for that as well. So just being anti-fragile, where they can just take risk as much as they want, and there's really no pain at failure. And that is why when you think, again, when Amazon does the Fire Phone and then just turns it off and it's no big deal, it's anti-fragility, where they could just do that, and it's just no big deal. Getting yourself in knowing, like helping your client get in a position. Are they going to be there? No. But most definitely they're very, 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 very fearful that if they launch a new product, they launch a new service, they launch a new thing, that it won't be successful. And then helping them through the worst case scenario that, okay, well, hang on a second, what is this actually going to mean? Right? Remember, people aren't worried about failing. They're worried about people watching them fail. Right? Very important. So helping your client through that anti-fragility kind of framework that, I don't know, second, third, fourth order consequences, this thing doesn't work. Here's the worst case scenario, and we're all good. So there you go, Shoots. And again, like real estate, what do they say? Location, location, location. In business, product, product, product. The ultimate moat is something like Apple, where they have such a good product that it sells itself. So there you go. So that's my, how'd I do? Any thoughts, feedback?
Well, the only question I'd have for you, first off, when you listed Colts, the Toronto Maple Leafs need to be included in that. So there's that aspect. Yeah. Because there's people that are still delusional, right? Like that they're going to win a cup. Anyways, how do you apply this, though, to, wait for it, everyone's favorite bingo game, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker? How do you apply this to the local HVAC or local painter or something like that? Like, rather than, because you talked a lot of like Amazon and Uber and
yeah.
All of Apple, right? But like, what about the small local guy? How can you create a moat for him or her?
Okay, again, gotta water this down and be realistic, right? But look, locally, here's a question. Actually, here's how to create a market dominating position, which is not a moat, but it's of the same family, right? So what is the biggest problem your end consumer has, right? And then solve it. But here's the problem. When they pick up the phone, so let's use a daycare as an example. When somebody phones the daycare, the first two questions they have are, where are you and how much? So guess what the owner of the daycare assumes that the buying criteria of their ideal client is? How much and where are we? The truth is, with 5 minutes of homework, you could work out that mom's real hot button is accountability. She's dropping her two pride and joys off with you for 7-8 hours at a time. She's at work a half an hour away. She needs to know that these kids are going to be cared for, right? Well, if you agreed with that, and that is the number one problem, how do we solve it? What if we implemented a web watch at the daycare, right? Where the mom could jump on her iPad, she could watch the kids playing, having fun, in the common room, watching them, mingling with the other kids, watching them learning, watching, the kid reading, etc. If you were willing to do that at your daycare, do you see how that would satisfy me? I would presume at a pretty high level that you are willing to be held accountable at a very high level. And I dare say yes, right? So how do you do that? So you implement a web watch, and then you just combated the number one challenge. So what's the biggest problem? There's a solution for it. If the competition is not doing the same, you suddenly create a better value proposition for you, product. You create a better value proposition than the competition. And then if you want to go, so another one, like let's go accelerated learning center, right? So let's say at your daycare, you're not going to implement the web watch, but you create an accelerated learning center where the kids that go to this particular daycare will expect to go into grade 1 with a grade 2 reading, writing, and arithmetic ability, right? There are some families that are going to see that, they go, oh my gosh, like this is where my kids got to go. This is unbelievable, right? And maybe another place is going to teach gymnastics, and like that's going to be their thing. So they're going to cater to young families that have an interest in gymnastics, right? So that's how they're going to separate themselves a little bit. But and by the way, those last two are unique selling propositions, and then the first one is a market dominating position. And the difference between the two is the market dominating position solves the problem inside the buyer's head. I don't think that mom is sitting there going, my gosh, my kid has got to go into grade 1 with a grade 2 reading, writing, and arithmetic ability, right? Like that's not a problem that she's trying to solve. But at the same time, it's very, very attractive when she sees it. So that's something that can help your local daycare stand out like crazy from the competition. And by the way, charge an extra 10, 15, 20% versus the competition and still have a waiting list, right? But you got to have a, like, am I right? Am I wrong? Do homework on the closest 25 daycares to you and show me somebody that's doing something like accelerated learning or, like the web watch. And in some cases you will define them, but often you won't. And then what about, and if there is a lot of it, like if you are not providing the web watch and all the competitors are, so now it's, you're at a distinct disadvantage, right? Like, how's that a good thing? So that shoots, what do you think? How'd I do? That help?
Well, I'm thinking you're hitting people with more of an emotional appeal, which is interesting. So let me run two things by real quick, and then we got to wrap here. But one is, so I've got my local painter client, and we were just, he's walking me through his entire process and everything else, and because I love to do that, right, for folks, just start to finish, walk me through from your perspective everything, all the value that you're providing. So. And then, because what do you see with painter ads? They're all the same, right? Call us for your quote, free quote, free whatever. Like, we'll paint your front door for free. Or like just all this nonsensical stuff. But as he's walking me through his process, I'm like, he goes, yeah. So I've got this relationship with one of the paint companies where they actually do a 30-minute like paint consultation just to color match and everything else. And I'm like, okay, there's something that people actually want. Right? People want to know what colors and all that. Like there's still emotion and excitement in that. When you're talking get a quote, now it's like, well, everyone's saying get a quote, so you're no different than anybody else. I said, well, what if you were to actually offer in-home 30-minute color consultations, and then you can put a couple of splashes of paint on their wall, and they can see it dry, and they can see what it actually looks like in their home. Like that's I think more appealing than get a free quote. What do you think?
Look, okay, 100%. If you want to know what so that's great. What I do, so the challenge that people have when they are painting their home is suddenly they can't live in their home. Do you know what I mean? There's like three, you know what I mean? Like there's this constant, if you've ever lived under construction, you know how painful that is. So speed, I can tell you speed, being able to go in one, you know what I mean? Like in one day, furniture out, paint, furniture back in, you're having dinner that night, right? So time, this is, you know what I mean? Like that can be a real headache. So that could be an example of solving the problem that mom and dad have. So anyway, so that, so thinking around speed is basically what I'm getting at there.
The other thing that I wanted to point out as well is because sometimes people will put their market dominating position or their marketing around one aspect of their business. Would you agree with me that perhaps they need to take a look at also which part of their business is most profitable? And then maybe find a proper hook around that. Like, how many times have you seen, oh, well, it's sort of our loss leader. Well, I don't know if, some of that's actually beneficial. You know what I mean? Like for small business. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. The hundreds. So what you're saying is they've got different areas of their business, right? And in some cases, what could be most profitable they're doing as their loss leader, or certainly what is their most profitable is not the thing that they're gunning everybody towards, right? So it's like it's a restaurant. When you go into a restaurant, a restaurateur that knows what he's doing knows exactly what his margins are on every single meal. Right. So then you'll go in on Tuesday night and you'll see that there's 3 specials. And then those specials, he's got high gross profit margin on, and he wants the waiters to push those. And he makes, killer. So when you buy, when you get a steak dinner, he's making significantly more than when you have the breast of chicken. So just understanding your numbers is what you're describing. And look, the average business owner, they're not even, it's, the ultimate hack is not a strategy, a tactic, it's a level of thinking. What you're describing here is a higher level of thinking for the entrepreneur, for the business owner, that they're just not entertaining. They go to work, they do their thing, they do it the way that they've always done it. And when they look at their P&L, they're wondering why it's not very exciting. And you're just describing that, because they're not looking at their business from a strategic standpoint to say, what products do we have? What services do we have? What margins do we have on X, Y, and Z? And that's the reason why they're not profitable shoots. So yes, and yes.
It's funny because my painter guy, I said to him, what's the most profitable part of your business? And he said, painting outdoor stucco. I said, congratulations. You just became Kelowna's stucco paint expert. Like that.
Nice. There you go. Okay. That's okay. Great example. And he didn't realize, right? Like he'd never taken the time to realize that, holy cow, I got better margins on this than I do on the other stuff. Well, push that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe something for next time, what we can talk about as well. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. When it comes to cost per lead, I think there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I want all the leads, but I don't want to really pay anything for them. It's like, really? Like if you're making $1,000 off of a sale, I'm pretty sure like people will be like, oh, I pay $50. Really? Because I'd probably pay you 200, 250. I'd even pay you 500. I'll do that 500 to 1,000 trade all day long. But I'd be curious your thoughts on what would be more realistic with that. I think that would be a great conversation to have in terms of even as a business coach, what is a realistic cost that you would be willing to pay to acquire that ideal business coaching client? I think that would be a fantastic conversation. So
can I answer? $2,000. That is the number, Shoots. They cost you $2,000 to get a B2B client, Shoots. So there you go. But yeah, that's great, man. Let's do that next week for sure.
No episode needed. All right, folks. That is it for another week. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Karl for all of your wisdom as per usual. And if you're not on the inside and getting access to the pre-show, folks, I tell you, you are missing out big time. There's a lot of also great hockey picks happening in there too. So you definitely don't want to miss those. You might want to miss those. But anyways, if you want more information on how to grow, scale, and just build a successful business coaching business, that makes sense. Go to focus.com and subscribe today. And again, if you enjoyed the podcast, please share it. And of course, leave us a review. As we know that all these services rate and rank based on positive reviews as well. And that is it, folks. We will see you in the next episode. And remember, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.